Max Scoville here for Rev3 Games, and I'm with the legendary Mr. David Cage.
Thank you.
The auteur of games, who's taking games and pushing them in quite a few new directions. Your latest is Beyond Two Souls, which what is Beyond Two Souls about?
So Beyond is about the story of this young woman called Jodie Holmes, who has a link with an invisible entity since the day she was born. So she doesn't know exactly what this thing is, but this presence is always there with her, and it's sometimes very nice and protective, sometimes very possessive and violent. So she'll have to deal with it, and the story is really the story of her life through 15 years. We'll see her as a little girl, a young teenager, and an adult, and we'll see how she changes through the years.
And this is not just a linear, clean-cut story. This is things happen. This is not just one cohesive storyline. Things change here, right?
Absolutely. We wanted to tell the story in no chronological order. So you will see a scene where she's an adult, then she's a kid, then she's a teenager, and everything is mixed up for a very good reason in the story. But it creates a very interesting dynamic about the storytelling itself, where the player needs to connect the dots. And really to see sometimes the consequences of something before seeing the causes. So yeah, it's about gathering all the pieces of the puzzle and trying to understand what the full picture is.
Oh wow! And you've got some well-known people involved in this. you've got Ellen Page and then Willem Dafoe in it. And this is not just them doing the voices. This you covered their faces in little balls and made them
actually
dance around in ping pong ball suits.
We scanned their faces and their bodies, so they look exactly the same in the game as in real life. Well, as close as we could get. And yeah, and we shot in performance capture, which is the same technology that we use on James Cameron's Avatar. So we capture the body, face, and voice at the same time. So we have a real sense of acting in the game.
And at the same time, it's spread over 15 years, so you have the luxury of controlling their age.
Yeah, which was a lot of fun to do, is actually showing how they evolve through this 15 years, and how we have a slightly younger Willem Dafoe at the beginning and a slightly older Willem Dafoe in the end, and same thing with Ellen. We see her when she's a little girl, when she's 8 years old, and we had a lot of fun also shooting when she's a teenager, and until the time she becomes an adult.
That's awesome. It's really cool to see that you've got classically trained actors. These are not actors who were trained through performance capture, but really they are performing normally. Was that a challenge for them? How did you cast them? What's the process there?
Well, the casting was very simple. I had a very short list with only one name on the list.
Really?
So it was Ellen Page and Willem Dafoe. Yeah, actually, when I was writing for Ellen, for example, it became very clear that she would be the perfect fit for the role. I wanted someone who would have this kind of energy, this strength, but at the same time who would be fragile and vulnerable in some ways. And also I was looking for an actress who would be capable of being Jodie Holmes at different ages and be credible at each age. So this is how everything happened. I thought when I was done with the script, okay, only Ellen Page can do it. Which was a crazy idea, but I was lucky enough to start my career working with David Bowie. And so when you started with David Bowie, you're not afraid of asking anyone else.
That's true.
That's the thing.
Everything's pretty simple after Bowie.
So we just sent the script to Ellen, and with a copy of Heavy Rain and some press reviews, and just with a nice letter saying why we thought she would be fantastic in the role. And then we met, talked about a character, and this is how everything started.
Oh wow, I like that. I mean, it's with Ellen Page. She's young, like she's my age, so she's kind of grown up around games. But Willem Dafoe has been, I mean, he's been acting since video games were in arcades. He's been doing this for a while. Was it harder to kind of explain to him the process or what you were doing?
We had to explain. Even to Ellen, but sometimes outside the game sphere, people are not that familiar with what video games are, and sometimes they have wrong conceptions about what games are. And sometimes they think it's just about shooting, it's just about this, and it's so much about violence. So we had to evangelize, explain that this is not the kind of games that we make, and it's all about story, it's all about characters. But also what helped us a lot was the fact that we had a script, something they were familiar with. So they had a character, this character had dialogues, and yes, there were choices and many things happening, and the script was considerably bigger than what they were used to.
How big was it?
It was about 2,000 pages.
Did you make them read that whole thing?
No, actually, of course we gave them a short version so they know what the scenes were about without having to read 2,000 pages. But they had to read them all, and unfortunately they had to learn their lines by heart.
Oh, wow.
Because of the performance capture, you cannot just read your lines, you just need to act like you would act on stage. So for Ellen, for example, she had to learn probably hundreds of pages by heart.
Oh, God.
It's quite crazy.
No, that's an undertaking. One thing I think is really interesting is Heavy Rain kind of blew everyone away when it came out, but it was also extremely divisive because I think a lot of people were like, is this a game? It's telling a lot more of a story, and narrative and gameplay are kind of different concepts. But since then, we've gotten a lot more games. The Walking Dead, for instance, and we've seen kind of a rise of indie games that are much more about storytelling. Most recently, Gone Home. People love that. How do you feel about people saying this isn't a game, or how do you feel about that sort of changing definition?
Honestly, I don't care, really. I mean, call it the way you want. I mean, the only question that matters is now, is it a game or isn't it a game? Do you enjoy it or not? That's the only question that really matters. And, different people have different expectations about what a video game should be or should not be. Some people just want a gun in their hand and shoot at people, and that's fine with me. Other people have different expectations. They want a story, they want emotions, they want something more meaningful, and that's fine too. This is the kind of games I make. I have a lot of respect for all expectations and all gamers and all developers doing different things, but I think it's fair to have the choice of the kind of games that you want to play, and not only have shooters, but also have indie games and have different games trying different things. Now,
what's really interesting is you've got co-op in here. You've added. I was when you were up there giving your presentation, I was like, well, they're going to add multiplayer, and then you're like, well, two people can explain how it works, because it.
Well, this is really something we learned from Heavy Rain. We had so many players coming to us and telling us exactly the same story, which is, oh, I played Heavy Rain with my wife, or with my friend, or sometimes with my grandmother, and it's always the same story. One player was holding the controller while the other player was playing the Puppet Master. And we thought that's interesting, because we had the same feedback on Indigo Prophecy before that. So it seems that we create games that people enjoy sharing for whatever reason, because there is a story, because there is a mystery, because there are different characters. They like to watch it together and play it together. And we thought, okay, what can we do to allow this second player to be active, not just play the Puppet Master, but actually play the game? And we had two characters in Beyond, Jody and the Entity, and we thought, well, that's an easy decision to make. Let's just allow each player to control one of the two characters. And we wanted to go even further, because we knew that for some people the DualShock controller can be a barrier, because for all gamers around the world, this controller is obvious and we all know it by heart. But for people who are not born and raised with a DualShock in their hands, some people just don't know how to hold it. And the thing is that some people just don't play because of that. And we thought, okay, what can we do to solve this and allow these people to play? And we thought, let's use touchscreen devices, whether it's phones or tablets, and on iOS or Android, you can just connect them to your PlayStation 3 and replace the controller by a simpler interface based on touchscreen. So you can share the game with people who usually don't like games or don't know how to play them, because the game becomes very easy to play.
This is a PlayStation 3 game. It doesn't look like it. It looks very much next gen, but we're right on the cusp of what's coming next. Where do you think games are going? What do you see happening for the next generation?
On PlayStation 4, we'll see a huge gap in matter of visual quality. I mean, we just started playing with the PlayStation 4 engine on this short called The Dark Sorcerer that we presented at E3.
That was a lot of fun.
And honestly, it's just basically Beyond's engine ported on
Wow.
PlayStation 4. So there were just a couple of unique features, but basically it's Beyond's engine. So it's not even a real PlayStation 4 engine that we're going to use on our next games. And we could immediately see how great it looked with very, very little effort. So technology-wise, I think everybody will have very quickly a very high quality, especially in the matter of photorealism. If this is the direction people want to take, I mean, they will see progress in a very spectacular way. But I'm more interested in how concepts evolve, because we see in our industry that sometimes technology goes much faster than concepts, and we end up with great technology but doing still pretty much the same games. So I'm curious to see how concepts will evolve and how we can find ways to create experiences that are more based on emotions and meaning. I'm really impassioned to see games that have something to say. I saw a couple, especially in the indie space, which is a great thing to see. I mean, some games that not necessarily deliver a message to mankind, but just have something personal and interesting and emotional to say. I'm really in love with this kind of games because they feel really different and sincere and deeper for whatever reason. So starting to be an old guy myself, I'm more and more inclined in being interested in this kind of experiences.
You're known for having generally pushing the boundaries of photorealism in your games. Do you ever see yourself doing something that is more visually simple? Like, for instance, people love Journey, and that was certainly not anywhere near photorealistic.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the kind of rendering that we choose for the games is really based on the story we want to tell. We thought that the story of Heavy Rain needed some kind of realism in the visuals, and same thing for Beyond. It's the story that really drives the rendering that we choose. But that's not a rule. I mean, it has nothing to do with emotion, because you can be extremely emotional with non-realistic rendering, and that works very well too. It's just the story and the emotions that you want to create that really decide what rendering you should choose.
But you showed this off at Tribeca Film Festival, didn't
right,
you?
Right.
How was the reception there? Because obviously we've seen the reaction from the gaming community, but this is people who aren't necessarily familiar with games.
It was very, very, very interesting, actually, because it was one of the few opportunities that we had with this video game to put it in front of people who are not gamers. So we had this large audience of movie lovers, and we were just projecting a game. So it was interesting to see the kind of expectations that they had, because some of them thought, well, is it going to be a shooter? Are we going to see a lot of violence? And actually we showed them a scene where Jodie's homeless. She lives outside and with a bunch of homeless people under a bridge. And I don't think that this is what they expected from a video game. And great, I mean, and it was great. The reception has been amazing. So we were really, really proud to be there. Proud, not because we want to be like films. We were proud to represent games and to explain what games are and what interactivity is about, but just to create this passerelle between two mediums and to say, okay, we are a game, you're films, we have a lot in common, we have things also that are really, truly different. But let's talk. Yeah. It's an interesting discussion.
It's not a competition. It's all art. It's all media.
Exactly.
When can people check out Beyond Two Souls? What is that?
Beyond will be out on October 8th, exclusively on PlayStation 3.
Oh. It's not coming to Wii U?
No.
Thank you so much for talking, David.
Thank you.
Game looks fantastic.
Thanks.
See you guys.